Hello, faithful, and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis. No hot takes, just intelligent dialogue about what's going on with the 49ers. And today we're going to be discussing some trade rumors that have been swirling. Brock going to the Steelers in exchange for TJ Watt. This was brought up by an ESPN analyst. The Niners potentially trading for Dolphins cornerback Jalen Ramsey. We'll get into that. Puka Nacua coming out and making some comments about the 49ers, specifically believing that the Niners window will close if Brock gets $50 million annually. And then we're going to take a look back from a week or so ago about what John, Jed, and Kyle had to say and how that may have some bearing on the NFL draft, which is slated to kick off a week from today as I am recording this on Thursday, the 17th of April. So let's get right into it. First podcast in about 2 weeks, and that is the product of a couple things. One, there hasn't been a lot to talk about, right? There's been no new free agent signings. There's been no extension for Brock. There's been no trade of Brandon Ayuk, as I've been saying for God knows how long, especially now after Ayuk got his $20+ million bonus exercised, cash in his pocket. There are people out there that'll still say and believe, well, if they believe it, that's a bigger problem, but it'll still say that, oh, watch Ayuk on draft night. Ayuk might get traded on draft night. He is not getting traded after the Yorks shelled out $20+ million beginning of April. He will be on the roster. It's just a matter of when is he going to be available. Kyle Shanahan was asked about a week ago, is it too early to see if he's going to start week one? Kyle's response was, that's the hope. Too early to tell. Let's get into mini camps and obviously the beginning of training camp in July to have a much better idea. He's about 5 months out from surgery. And they're almost 5 months out from the start of the regular season. So he's at the midway point in terms of at least what the generally agreed rehabilitation, 9 to 10 months to come back from something. Adam Schefter reporting mid-season. I'm still maintaining if he doesn't start the season, which I don't believe he will, that he'll be activated either off the PUP list, meaning he's active for week 6 or 7, or they keep him on the roster, do not put him on PUP, and then they can see at what point, week 2, week 4, week 5, that he's available and just inactivate him for each game. But let's talk about the first swirling. This isn't even a rumor. This is just a bad opinion, a bad conversation piece. And usually when big names are discussed, it's usually a bad take. Big name guys equals bad take. And what was it Chris Canty, I believe, brought out there on ESPN radio was the Steelers trying to trade for Brock Purdy. And this was discussed actually maybe a month plus ago, where this same brainchild mentioned that the Steelers should give up 2 or 3 first-round draft picks for Brock Purdy, because it would, quote, fix Pittsburgh's QB situation for at least the next 5 years. And by 5 years, meaning his first contract with the Steelers. So Brock, based on everybody else and based on this ESPN radio show in the morning, Unsportsmanlike, which Chris Canty's on, has said repeatedly that Brock Purdy's not worth $50+ million. Brock Purdy needs the Avengers. Brock Purdy needs Kyle Shanahan. I'm not going to say that he said he was an average quarterback, but that he's just not worth that investment. So if you had that hot take, and it really isn't a hot take if everybody's saying it, but you want to make bold statements about things. If that was the hot take 4 or 5 weeks ago, why a week ago, if that was your take a month ago, why would Brock Purdy then be worth to the Steelers $50+ million plus giving up 2 or 3 first-round draft picks? How does that make any sort of sense when you downgrade from Kyle Shanahan to Arthur Smith at offensive coordinator? Jalen Warren, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle versus Pat Freiermuth. Obviously, they have a better receiver situation with George Pickens and DK Metcalf, but that is, a powder keg just waiting to blow anyway. And, a better defense right now, at least what we saw last year from the Steelers versus the Niners, but in a much more difficult division, right? When you have to go up against the Ravens twice, the Bengals twice, who they seem to always split with, and who knows what the Browns are going to be, probably terrible. And oh, by the way, a Northeast team where Brock will have to play in inclement weather makes no sense. So I don't know if this was a pivot or just, again, big name equals bad take. Now it's, should the Steelers trade TJ Watt? And I don't know if it's and a pick for Brock Purdy. And I think it would be Watt and a pick because a quarterback the caliber of Brock Purdy is more valuable to any franchise, more so than a defensive end the caliber of JJ Watt. You could even say a Myles Garrett. You can build whatever team you want anywhere, unless you have a historic defense like the Ravens did in 2000, like the Seahawks did in 2013, like the Bears had in 85. Then you can win a Super Bowl with the likes of a second or third year Russell Wilson, with Jim McMahon for the Bears, with Trent Dilfer for the Ravens. You could even say, what was it, the 2003 Tampa Bay Buccaneers or 2002 with Brad Johnson. That was that's maybe not a historic defense, but a very, very good defense that put the clamps on the Raiders in that Super Bowl. Steelers don't have that. And Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, while they are, game changers and game wreckers, they are not worth as much as a quarterback like Brock Purdy. But let's just break down this potential trade thought. It's not a rumor. Again, rumors start online or in the media based on someone, could be a moron, that just says something and it gains traction, right? This is not a trade request that Brock's agent is making, that TJ Watt's camp is making, that the Steelers are, in my mind, actively pursuing, even though Watt is on the last year of his contract. But TJ Watt is 31 years old. He is on the last year of his deal. He is due $21.5 million in cash this upcoming season and has a $30 million cap hit. So he's going to want a new contract. So whatever that amount in cash is, a new team is going to have to give him more than $21.5 million. Would the Niners be that team, even if they're trading Brock Purdy away? I don't think so. I think this is a team that, regardless of, let's say, God forbid, Brock blows his Achilles out in training camp, OTAs, whenever he gets signed, I don't think they're going to take on older salary. And TJ Watt is older. He's 31. People are going to say, oh, Nick Bosa is old. He's 27. Watt's 4 years older. Watt, you could say, is the better player, but that's still 4 years older. An older player getting their last big contract usually equals disaster. Certainly it happens in the NBA. It never works out. Certainly it happens in Major League Baseball. It rarely works out, especially players that are getting 15 plus year deals where the last 5 years of that deal or more, is going to be an albatross around the neck of that team. TJ Watt is not worth giving up Brock Purdy. TJ Watt and a first-round draft pick is not worth giving up Brock Purdy. And anybody out there saying, well, Kyle got Mac Jones now, and that's really who he wanted in the draft. He didn't want Trey Lance. He was pressured into drafting Trey Lance. Kyle has final say on personnel. No one was, is, or will be pressuring Kyle into taking somebody, especially giving up 2 draft picks and a first-round pick swap to get up there to number 3 overall. No one's going to tell him to take Trey Lance if he didn't want to. It was probably down to those 2 quarterbacks, and Kyle and others, if they were down with the pick, misevaluated Trey Lance, wild lack of experience at North Dakota State. And it did not translate to the NFL. And if you want to say you got a raw deal and Brock, elevated his play and took the reins and didn't give the job back, that's all well and good. And congratulations to Trey Lance for signing with the Los Angeles Chargers, as I think right now the third string quarterback behind Justin Herbert. I believe Easton Stick is still there. And now Trey Lance, whose contract is worth upwards of $6 million if he hits certain incentives. Easton Stick, also a North Dakota State quarterback. Go figure. So let's get off the Trey Lance stuff for a second. The Watt trade, as interesting as it is to discuss, is obviously not happening. There is, I think, not that it's a key date, but on the 21st or 22nd, a couple days before the draft starts, the Niners will be kicking off their OTAs, their voluntary OTAs. And I think it was hoped by a lot of people, including myself, and I'm sure Lynch and Kyle, that the Brock Zeal would be finished by then. That's not the case. And if you hear my dog barking in the background, I apologize. She's, a little bit of a barkaholic. I can't really do anything about that unless I walk away from the mic. So apologies if you do hear it. Brock, I'm sure wanted, before all this started, wanted to get a deal done. Who knows what the contract started at, but to get it done before OTAs, I think would have put everybody's mind at ease. To get it done before free agency would have put everybody's mind at ease, but it just didn't wind up happening. So now we have to go through the situation of, when is he going to sign? Will he be at OTAs? If he is, will he not be participating? And remember, the first phase of OTAs is just diving into the playbook. It's weight training. There really isn't anything physical happening. So if he does or doesn't show up, or they don't get 100% attendance, it's fine. It's voluntary. So let's move from the Brock is going nowhere discussion to hearing the past couple days that the Niners are a logical landing spot for Dolphin cornerback Jalen Ramsey. And in fact, the Niners right now have the fourth best odds to acquire Ramsey, who is 31 years old. He's only due $5.6 million in cash in 2025, although he has a $16.6 million cap hit. I'm not sure how much that completely transfers over to a new team if he's traded, but let's just assume right now it's the full amount. A new team, if they trade for Ramsey, can get out of the contract after 2025. I think he's signed through 2027 or 2028, and his base salaries are in the $20 million range. His production has slightly decreased the past 3 years, interception-wise, from 4 to 3 to 2. He was not a Pro Bowler last year. And I guess my open question out to you guys is, what is he worth compensation-wise? Is he worth a third-round pick, of which the Niners have 2, a fourth-round pick, of which the Niners have 2, a fifth-round pick, of which the Niners have 2? And is it worth trading for him, an older player that's not going to be on the team in 2026 unless they wildly redo his contract? And I'm sure he's not going to want to take a massive pay cut, because you'd have to cut his pay basically in half for me to be okay with it. Granted, who am I? Versus the younger player, a draft pick, Trey Brown, who they signed from the Seahawks. If they're, flirting with drafting Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan, at 11 overall, which I don't think they will, but there are other quality corners that they can get in the second, third, or fourth that could potentially be a starter outside or start out in the slot, or just become a backup. And you have Demo and Renardo Green outside and Trey Brown in the slot. You still have Darrell Luther behind them. You still have Trey Tomlinson, who was brought in as a potential solve at slot or an option at slot. I'm not going to close the door on a Jalen Ramsey trade. It's still fresh enough that I'm not 1,000% sure how I would feel about it tomorrow if they actually traded for him. Now, this is a team that's not a Jalen Ramsey away from a Super Bowl. I think they're much closer to deep playoff contention than a lot of people in media outlets want to give the 49ers. And it's evidenced by the fact that at multiple sports books, the Niners are favored to win the West, and their over-under win total is 10.5, second in the NFC behind the Eagles. This is a team still with a lot of talent. Jalen Ramsey, I wouldn't say is a malcontent. I don't think he's a bad guy, but he does have a personality. He has a pretty big personality. And not that I don't know how he would mesh in the locker room or with the defense or the DBs, because it's a production-based business, right? If he's getting turnovers, shutting down his side of the field, that's one thing. But I think a 28-year-old Jalen Ramsey intrigues me more than a 31-year-old Jalen Ramsey. So for now, I'd say no to the trade, and I don't imagine that actually happening either. So now let's stay, we're going to stay in the NFC West because that's where the Niners are, and that's where the Rams are. So wide receiver Puka Nacua made some news saying that when he, his first game against the Niners, he was surprised about how much red there was, and it felt like a Niner home game, and his teammates had to say, yeah, that's just kind of how it is when the Niners play here. But he also made the statement that he believes that the Niners window will close if they pay Brock Purdy $50 million annually. Now, this is a player who actually, by his own admission, his rookie year, didn't know who was in his division. Didn't know what the other teams that were in the NFC West. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know how the salary cap works. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know how contracts are structured. He's still on his rookie deal, right? He's able to renegotiate after this season, which is going to be his third. So he has no idea that if Brock makes $55 million annually, that does not mean he has a $55 million cap hit for the team in 2025 or 2026. It's probably less than half that for the first year, close to half that the second year. And then obviously it goes up as the cap goes up. It doesn't close the window because they've got rid of some salary. They're going to supplement that with younger players. And should they have an 8, 9, 10, or 11 man draft class that makes the team, these are going to be young players that, should they make the team, could push veterans that are more expensive off the roster. Now, I've been on record saying, I'm going to say it again, I don't think they're going to make all 11 picks. Every mock draft I've been doing, and I'm going to dive into the draft next podcast, which will either be Sunday or Monday, that they have a better chance of making 8 or 9 picks than making 11 or more. And Larry Krueger, who posts a lot and is a, jolly but portly fellow, really believes that they need a 15 or 16 person draft class. I saved that post so when it happens, I can remind him of his, I'm saying stupid stuff just to get engagement because it's social media nonsense that, he tweets out there or posts out there, or X's. Can we make that a verb? X's out there every once in a while. But let's stay with Puka Nacua, and his quarterback, Matt Stafford. And I've said this before, if you listen to the podcast before, if you're watching, if this is your first time, glad to have you aboard. Hopefully we keep you for the long term and you're enjoying it. But I've said this before, Brock Purdy's down year in 2024 was basically Matt Stafford's year the past 3 years with the Rams. Now let's look at last year. Brock completed 66% of his passes for 3,864 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Stafford, 66% completion percentage, 3,762 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Brock played in 1 fewer game. And Brock added 5 rushing touchdowns and about 300 yards on the ground, which Stafford was negligible. As much as we want to factor that in, it's an aspect of playing quarterback, but not the throwing aspect that I want to focus on. So that's Brock's down year, guys. And Stafford, had a good game in the playoffs. First round, went to Philadelphia. Everyone's saying, oh, they were 1 throw away from upsetting the Eagles. No, they weren't. They were a throw and a 2-point convert. They were a touchdown and 2-point conversion away from tying them. And then who knows what would have happened. But hyperbole, just like the Niners-Ravens Super Bowl. If Crabtree caught a touchdown, the Niners would have won. No, there was a lot of time left on the clock for the Ravens. Same thing with the Niners-Chiefs Super Bowl, first time they met. If Jimmy G had hit Emmanuel Sanders, people are saying, oh, the Niners would have won. No, they wouldn't, because there was under 2 minutes to go for the Chiefs to get the ball back. So the Rams went out valiantly. They played the Eagles the best in the playoff run that the Eagles had, for sure, after they beat the Packers and then dismantled the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. But let's look at the last 3 years, right? And Sean McVay is an offensive wizard, just like Kyle Shanahan is. He's getting good usage out of Kyron Williams. The offensive line has improved. You can say the Rams D has been better than the Niners D, at least last year, if not the past 2 years. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp now with the Seahawks. They have weapons. Let's not, and Matthew Stafford is a more talented quarterback than Brock Purdy. If people want to say he's a better quarterback than Brock Purdy, I'm not going to argue it. They're probably in the same tier of quarterbacks. You have tier 1, which is obviously going to be Mahomes and Burrow and Lamar and Josh Allen as your top four. And then maybe the next tier, I don't know if it's 4 or 6, that's maybe where Brock is, or at the tail end of the second tier, and Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff and Jalen Hurts, players that have not only performed in the regular season, but have performed in the postseason as well. So Brock, the last 3 years, I'm going to rattle this off relatively quickly because I don't want to bore you with numbers, but his rookie year played in 5 games, 67%, almost 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Year 2 was his MVP year, 69%, almost 4,300 yards, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, missed the last game because they had the bye. And last year we mentioned 66, 3,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in 15 games. Stafford, the last 3 years, 2022, 68% completion, 2,100 yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 picks in 9 games. So Brock bests him there through 3 more touchdowns in 4 less games than Stafford. 2023, 63%, 3,965 yards, 24 touchdowns, 11 interceptions in 15 games. Brock beat him out, MVP year. And this year, again, comparable, 66% completion, 3,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions in 16 games. If you average those 3 years, I know there's a lot of numbers, but let's just take the average. The average of those 3 years, Brock, 67.5 completion percentage, 3,173 yards, 21 touchdowns, 9 interceptions in 36 games total. Stafford, 65.5% completion percentage, 3,271 yards, 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions in 40 games total. So again, I'm not here to tell you anything other than those are the stats, right? And Brock's down year, and everyone's saying, oh, he had a down year. He built upon 2022 with an MVP caliber season in 2023. 2024 slipped down. You could call it regression. You can call it missing a lot of people. And it was just a shit year overall by the team, right? Defensively, special teams, all around. What Brock did, though, in 2024 is he led the NFL in completion percentage on passes traveling 10 or more yards downfield. Brock was at 58%, right behind him, Jared Goff at 57%. Then you have Burrow, Lamar, and Tua at 55%. Stafford at 54%. Jalen Hurts at 52%. Justin Herbert at 51%. Patrick Mahomes at 50%. CJ Stroud, wonderkin, super accurate quarterback, right? 49%. Dak Prescott and Jordan Love at 46%. Josh Allen at 42%. And yes, I will say, throw it out there, like the attempts, you know, if someone's going to say, show me the attempts, maybe Brock didn't have as many attempts 10 plus yards downfield as other quarterbacks did. Okay. But if these other quarterbacks are more accurate than Brock, more talented, can fit throws into a tighter window, it doesn't matter how many attempts you give them, their percentages should be higher. Mahomes should be higher than 50%. Prescott and Jordan Love should not be 12 percentage points behind Brock Purdy. Josh Allen should not be 42% or 16 percentage points behind Brock Purdy. Some of those are throwaways for all quarterbacks, right? You know, throwing a ball away deep downfield. Maybe Josh Allen does it more than most, but he does put the ball in harm's way, or has historically. Last year, the last couple of years has gotten better. But I've seen Bills games where he's throwing the ball into double coverage. It may not be intercepted, but it wasn't a good decision. He still trusts his arm a bit too much. And maybe Brock's percentage is so high because he doesn't know he knows he doesn't have that type of arm. But for as much as Brock Purdy, people say he needs the Avengers, and do the Avengers make Brock? Well, the Niners got rid of Deebo Samuel and they replaced him with Demarcus Robinson from the Rams. Adequate receiver, right? 2-year deal. So the Rams lost Demarcus Robinson. They re-signed Tutu Atwell for over $10-12 million for like a year, which is absurd. But they lost Cooper Kupp, and who do they bring in? Devontae Adams. So we always just have to be a bit fair and balanced, that if Brock Purdy needs superstars around him to perform, Why hasn't Matt Stafford thrown more than 24 touchdowns in a season the past 3 years when he's had some really good weaponry and a young wizard of an offensive coordinator behind him? And if they believe that much in Matt Stafford, even losing Cooper Kupp, why are they bringing in Devontae Adams? The short answer is because good players, good skill position players, make a quarterback's job easier, and there's no such thing as a good or an elite quarterback without having elite weapons, right? Are there exceptions to the rule? Sure, they are few and far between. But look at Patrick Mahomes' down years statistically. It's when the Chiefs decided to get rid of Tyreek Hill and they're bringing in Xavier Worthy and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Rashee Rice. His second year winds up tearing his MCL or shoulder. No, it was a leg injury. Quarterbacks need players, right? CJ Stroud, even bringing in Stephon Diggs, even though he got hurt and they were banged up some in the receiving core, regressed in year 2, completely regressed, worse than Brock did. And it'll be year 3 for Brock, or year 2.5, or whatever you want to call it, because he only played 5 regular season games his first year, plus 2 playoff games. And you really can't count the Eagle game because he got hurt in the first drive. So he played 7 games year 1, 16 plus 3 playoff games in year 2, 15 games in year 3. So it's really 2.5 seasons of starting for Brock. And with that inexperience, he still outperformed Matthew Stafford the past 3 years, who is an old hand at this. He had a great first year with the Rams, then has tailed off the last 3, if you want to call it age, injury, whatever, catching up. That's all part of it. Nobody was using, or a lot of people wanted to crucify Brock and throw dirt on him when he was coming off the elbow injury or surgery. Do we see that? Do we see any praise heaped on him, honestly, for coming back from the UCL tear? Was there any was the discussion ever, oh my God, look what Brock did, an MVP caliber year coming off of a potential career-ending injury, legit potential career-ending injury? No, it was, well, Brock's not that good because he has all this talent around him. I mean, the discussion is so one-sided by far too many people out there, either haters or people that had a Trey Lance man crush, or I don't want to say people that don't know football, that people that just don't want to believe what they're seeing with their eyes for whatever reason. And there are far too many Niner fans that are hating on Brock. And he is what, in a way, saved John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan's job and resurrected the franchise after the Trey Lance miss. This team was not good for a couple of years. The first year without Jimmy, the second year when Jimmy got hurt. Obviously, Jimmy gets him to a Super Bowl. Then there's the COVID year, and then obviously NFC Championship games. He has kept the team. Brock Purdy has kept the team to what their expected level of play is: playoffs / NFC Championship game or Super Bowl. Does that happen every single season? No. Even though, the Patriot dynasty of 20 years of Tom Brady wasn't 20 years of AFC Championship games or Super Bowls. They went to a lot, but it wasn't 20. Teams can have off years, one, just because of players regressing, but also what we saw in 2020 and 2024 in terms of the injury bug. It's a shame Brock hasn't gotten paid yet. Brock will get paid in the mid-50s. I know people are out there like Peter Schrager saying he doesn't think he may get $55 million annually. He may or may not, doesn't really matter. We'll see what he's going to get guaranteed wise. He's not going to get the $250 million guaranteed that Josh Allen got, and that's okay. If he gets between 150 and 175, I think that's great. I don't, maybe 200 is the max, but I don't think he's going to get that high. And if he does, good for him, right? Good for him, because they're still fielding a team with a lot of good Pro Bowl or All Pro players on it, and they are still favored to win the West at multiple sports books. Now let's quickly talk about, this is from a week plus ago, but I haven't had a podcast in about 2 weeks. So what Jed York, John Lynch, and Kyle Shanahan had to say when asked about the team. And let's start with Jed, since we were just talking about Brock Purdy. when asked about Brock Purdy, here was the quote from Jed York. I think Brock's a top 10 QB. I think he's great, especially when you combine him with Kyle Shanahan and you combine him with what we have. He's a heck of a quarterback, and we want him to be here long term. Now, a lot of people were making up like, look what he said. It was a backhanded compliment, especially when you combine him with Kyle and what we have. He didn't say he's a top 10 quarterback only because of Kyle and the weapons. It's especially because of what we have, right? Would Stafford be a top 10 quarterback on the Raiders instead of with Sean McVay? Would Patrick Mahomes be a top 10 quarterback in Carolina instead of with Andy Reid in Kansas City? We saw Tom Brady regress when he didn't have Josh McDaniels as his OC in New England. It's a silly thing to say. Obviously, great coaching and great players should fuel or empower or fuel maybe some productivity from an already good quarterback. But at the same time, there have been players in situations, quarterbacks or others, that they've been surrounded by talent, surrounded by great coaching, and still flamed out. Alex Smith was with Andy Reid for God knows how long, and they saw enough that they drafted Patrick Mahomes, right? And not to pile on Alex Smith, but there have been, the NFL is littered with Jeff Georges, with quarterbacks, Jamarcus Russell, Trey Lance, quarterbacks that just didn't even come close to reaching. Now, these are quarterbacks that flamed out, but Jay Cutler's of the world, right? Who knows what Bryce Young is going to wind up being? Quarterbacks that just, you could put them in any situation and they may not excel, or they have all the talent in the world and they're not in a great situation. They can't excel because a quarterback cannot carry a team by himself. You need to have the complementary pieces. This isn't the NBA where if you have two superstars, you can generally dominate, although that's kind of going away and it's more, there's no more big three. I should have said big three. A big two and complementary pieces are probably the way to go in the NBA moving forward. So what Jed said about Brock is totally fair, and it makes sense if you're not trying to parse apart words and make bombastic interpretations just for engagement on social media. Now, Jed continued his next quote about obviously having to pay Brock. When you make the decision that you want to pay a quarterback that has obviously been underpaid for his first 3 seasons in the NFL, when you make that change, you have to make sacrifices somewhere. We all get it. Now, Brock is getting a pay bump to about $5 million this year before, the renegotiated contract and whatever that extension looks like. Yes, and I know none of us, including myself, are going to cry for the York family when they are billionaires. But there was a certain amount of cash that they were not willing to spend, which is why you saw Malik Collins get released and Javon Hargrave get released, and not bringing back Charvarius Ward, which never made sense anyway with Renardo Green's emergence, Talanoa Hufanga, and Dre Greenlaw. The amount that Jalen Moore got, ridiculous. The amount that Aaron Banks got from the Packers, ridiculous. This stuff was never in the cards. So they had Jed York wanting to free up some cash, being a top 5 cash spending team. And I think John Lynch said it perfectly. When all said and done with Brock's extension, they're going to be a top 5 cash spending team again in the league. So anyone calling the Niners cheap, you guys got to chill. It's nice to say things or parrot things that other people are saying, but that's just not the case. So they did have to make sacrifices. Now, going into the negotiation period, again, last quote from Jed, quote, I don't negotiate contracts, but any conversations that I've had with Brock personally have been great. So I feel good. And when he's ready, we'll sit down and finish it. It shouldn't be that hard to do. And people were jumping on, well, when Brock's ready, is Brock being obstinate? Is he having an attitude? Are they throwing shade at Brock or blaming him? Listen, negotiations, guys, are a two-way street. Do you think people are sitting down every single day for 2 straight months trying to work out a deal? No, there's other stuff that Brock probably wanted to get away with his now wife, and I'm sure the Yorks and other people and Parag wanted to take time off to do the Cabo trip with whatever players. It'll get done. And I'm sure even during all this that Brock's agent, I'm sure, has been in contact with John Lynch and Parag Marath to try to figure out, some parameters and whatever the starting point is for the agent versus for the team. Again, another line that really doesn't mean all that much unless people just want engagement on social media. So let's transfer from Jed York to John Lynch, talking about the roster as a whole, and then we're going to be talking about the O-line. So quote from John Lynch, the first one, I would say that subtly, we like the players that we brought in, talking about receiver Demarcus Robinson, tight end Luke Farrell, and cornerback, nickelback Trey Brown. We think they'll add to our team, and we're ready to roll. So now Robinson he's got a couple hats to fill, right? Chris Conley's gone, so your veteran bottom of the roster type receiver, but you also have Debo who's gone and Ayuk who's working his way back from injury. And let's just say he's at the least not available in September. Demarcus Robinson is going to be a starter alongside Ricky Pearsall, and Juwan Jennings will probably slide back into the big slot role as the number 3 receiver, or Jennings wins outside and Robinson becomes a slot receiver. Either way, Robinson's going to get a lot of snaps. Luke Farrell, tight end 2. Lynch and Shanahan have spoke glowingly about him, more of a blocker than a receiver, but I think he has the opportunity to maybe surpass that minuscule receptions total of 14, which is the next highest tight end reception total next to George Kittle the past 3 or 4 years on the team, and obviously can block. And Trey Brown right now, depending on what happens in the draft, has the inside track on being the nickelback for San Francisco, or starting outside if Demo moves to the slot. Additive, right? These are not the huge, Robinson was a 2-year deal, Farrell was a 3-year deal, and Trey Brown was a 1-year deal. They were not huge break the bank deals, but there wasn't going to be a break the bank deal given the fact that they were shedding salary to accommodate for Brock, which will be a break the bank deal, and the fact that Demo got his break the bank deal during the season. If Demo got that contract a month ago, people would probably not look as down upon San Francisco for being cheap. But since it happened midseason, people forget about it. It's like, oh, what are you doing in free agency? There's all these aggressive moves happening. Well, what about the Niners? What about us? Well, they made a big move with Demo midseason or in November, whenever it was. And Brock is coming. Chill. So again, next quote from John Lynch. Quote, I look at our roster, and while we've seen a lot of great players leave, and that's hard to watch, we still have a lot of Hall of Fame worthy players. There are some guys who will be staring that in the face, when they're done. There's a lot of them on this roster. There's a tremendous core that we can go be competitive with and add some young players, and I think it will be exciting and necessary. Yes, Trent Williams, Dominic Puni, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk when healthy, Juwan Jennings, Brock Purdy, Kyle Juszczyk, Christian McCaffrey on offense. Defense, it needs some work. It's Bosa, it's Warner, it's Demo, it's an ascending Renardo Green, an ascending Malik Mustafa, and they brought Jason Pinnick, which I think is going to start at one of the safeties, someone who's got 3 years starting experience. He's not a Hall of Fame worthy player like John Lynch was saying, but the folks that are writing off the Niners, all you got to do is just stop and look at the roster or think of the Pro Bowl, all pro players that are still remaining and realize 24 teams in the NFL, 20 to 24 teams in the NFL would kill to have that core of players. And they have to supplement mid-level free agents. We talked about 3 of them, Robinson, Farrell, and Brown. And the draft. They have to hit on, if they make 9 picks, they have to hit on 5 or 6 of them that are immediate contributors for this upcoming season. Now let's get to the offensive line per Lynch. We like our right tackle, McKivitz. We like our center, Brendel. Left guard, we have some candidates. Ben Barch, Spencer Burford, Nick Sakiel. We have some candidates in-house right now, but we will look to add, but will we look to add in the draft? Certainly. And let's just pause on the offensive line for a second. If the starters were trotted out today, it would be Trent Williams at left tackle, Ben Barch at left guard, Jake Brendel at center, Dominic Puni at right guard, and Colton McKivitz at right tackle. The 2 main backups are Nick Sakiel and Spencer Burford, and Matt Hennessy, again, may get some play at center or potentially compete at it, or might be one of the guards. The Niners will be drafting a tackle and a guard, and here's why. Trent Williams has 2 years left on his deal. There's no guarantee he plays beyond this year. Colton McKivitz, it's the last year of Colton McKivitz's deal at right tackle in 2025. And the fact that Jalen Moore got $15 million a year from the Chiefs as a backup What do we think Colton McKivitz is going to get on the open market? I don't care if you say he's worth it or not. He's going to get 10, 12, $15 million a year from someone that is not the Niners. Ben Barch, 1-year deal, signed to be left guard. Nick Sakiel, Spencer Burford as backups, 1-year deals left. Barch, Sakiel, Burford, McKivitz, 2025 is the last year as of right now on their contracts. The Niners need to replenish with young, talented players that are under contract for more than just 2025. They will be addressing the offensive line. Plus, they only have, to me, there's only 7 locks on the roster. Williams, Barch, Brendel, Purdy, McKivitz, Sakiel, and Burford. They need 2 more to get to 9 that they're going to carry 9 offensive linemen on the 53-man roster. They have other linemen on the team now, but no one that is a sure thing or anything close to it, right? The O-line, the team likes better than fans do. Whether that's okay or not, I don't know. But the team also knows more than fans do. I don't care how much film you watch or how much film of someone else who watches film and you're getting opinions from them. Almost always, right? You're going to be taking the opinion of coaches over armchair coaches and GMs. Now let's transition to Kyle Shanahan. Last segment. Had a lot to say. Let's start talking about the defense, the run D. Quote, our run D struggled, especially at the end of the year. We had a couple of injuries that made it harder to where we were kind of holding on, and that's why we feel we're somewhat starting over with it. And they're starting over with 4 D tackles that they had on the roster: Evan Anderson, Khalil Davis, Jordan Elliott, and I'm blanking on the 4th one. I should know that, but let me just kind of, move past that. They're going to be adding 2 D tackles in the draft. They need to. I mean, at the very least 1, but if you add 2, you're going to be pushing the 4 that are remaining on the team because they're going to carry 5 D tackles at the most, right? The interior of the line was not great. The ends, Bosa, Floyd obviously is gone. Yetur Gross-Matos is there. You have Samo, you have Robert Beal, you have Drake Jackson coming off the knee injury, and you have some couple other players that the Niners, picked up and signed to future contracts. The run D does need to be reinvented, and it's not just players, it's scheme. And this leads into the next quote that Kyle had. If you have good players, you have a good scheme, you should be good against the run. And that's where you try to make it. When you lose players or someone's getting after your scheme, how do you adjust to it? And I think the experience that Robert Saleh had, he's had that over the years. Now, he's not throwing shade at Nick Sorensen. Nick Sorensen should never have gotten promoted. That's on Kyle. He was dealt a bad hand with the early injury to Javon Hargrave and losing other players as well. But he didn't have the experience to fall back on to adjust. And Brandon Staley obviously wasn't that big of a help. He was only a D coordinator for 1 year with the Rams, then a coach with the Chargers, and the defenses there always struggled. So he wasn't adding much from an experience standpoint. It's not like these people don't know football, don't know defensive football. Of course they do. But there's a difference between Brandon Staley, Nick Sorensen, and obviously someone like a Vic Fangio or someone that's been a D coordinator in the league for at least, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. There's a knowledge gap there, right? And Kyle continues with Saleh. So that's stuff that Robert's gone through a bunch. He's done it in New York. He's done it here. And you always want to be able to add in and fix it with personnel. But when you can't fix it with personnel right away, you've got to do it with scheme. And Robert's been successful doing that with both. This upcoming year is going to be a personnel enhancement through the draft. And again, we have no idea who's going to be available after the draft, early summer, final cuts, that they may add a veteran defensive tackle, but they're going to be bringing in a couple in the draft. If they only draft 1, then they're going to be bringing in a couple undrafted rookie free agents. But it's going to be a new look or a new schemed defensive line. And remember, whatever rookie they bring in, maybe 1 rookie starts next to Jordan Elliott, or 1 rookie starts next to Evan Anderson. I don't think you're going to see 2 rookie defensive tackle starters on the line. You may see 1 and the other rookie rotating in. Kevin Givens was the fourth one. I'm sorry. I just thought of it now. So you have Kevin Givens, Kalia Davis, Evan Anderson, and Jordan Elliott as your 4 D tackles currently on the roster. They need to beef that up, whether it's physically weight-wise, getting some 330-pounders in there, or beef it up numerically. They should have 8 to 10. Let's be conservative and say, not conservative, let's be logical and say 10 defensive tackles on the 90-man roster. Now, Kyle did talk about, what about losing Robert after this year? Is he a flight risk? Is it a 1-year situation? Quote, you understand that his ultimate goal is to be a head coach. And that is for almost every coach or assistant coach out there. So if we had a hell of a year and we lost Robert to another team, I'd be happy for him, disappointed for us, but I think that would mean we're doing some pretty good things too. So that's something you've got to be prepared for in this league. And they are prepared for it because they also hired Gus Bradley, who has a decade of defensive coordinator experience and 4 years of head coaching experience in this league, when he was released by the Indianapolis Colts as their DC the past couple of years to be the heir apparent to Robert Saleh. I don't know if Robert Saleh needs Gus Bradley's advice, but Gus Bradley's been doing the DC thing longer than Robert Saleh has, right? So to have another brain there that's not Brandon Staley could only be beneficial for this team. And if Saleh is gone, I think the understanding when hired is, hey, I don't know if they sign him to a multi-year deal. Talking about Gus Bradley. Saleh, again, I don't know either, but it doesn't really matter because he could just get out of that contract when trying to be a head coach. But I'm sure there was an understanding with Gus Bradley saying, listen, when Robert's gone, you're being elevated. If Robert goes at any point in 2026, 2027, we're going to elevate you to DC unless they have some sort of crazy falling out. And let's talk about Jake Brendel, everyone's favorite punching bag on the O-line. Per Kyle, quote, a lot of these guys get mismatched against nose tackles, and some of the D tackles that they've got to go against. I think Jake does protection as good as anyone in the league, and I think he's always been a very good run player for us too. And Pro Football Focus somewhat backs that up. He was ranked the 20th ranked center against the pass, 8th against the run, and 12th overall. And Kyle doesn't necessarily think this is a competition situation with Matt Hennessy. I think he thinks that Brendel's the front runner, but if someone like a Matt Hennessy, or if they draft a guard with center flexibility and this player shows out really well, maybe they would give him a look, but I'd be highly, highly skeptical that a rookie would start at center. Here's your quote from Shanahan. Quote, I really didn't look at it going in as Jake's competing. I think Jake's played at a pretty high level. I think our whole O-line has. Brendel's also cheap. He's making under $4 or $5 million a year. He is 32, 33. He's probably on his last year or two with the team. Kyle is not going to go young. He trusts Jake Brendel. You can do better than Jake Brendel. You can do worse than Jake Brendel. Same with Colton McKivitz, right? We've talked about, and you've heard, if you've listened to Chris Forrester talk and even Kyle Shanahan, the philosophy on the O-line is spend on skill position. Will make the O-line work. But they've also spent on the O-line, right? Traded picks and gave Trent Williams a big contract. 2nd round pick with Aaron Banks. They drafted Dominic Puni. They hit on that. They did spend on Weston Richburg early on as a center. They brought in and then blew out his knee. Brought in Alex Mack as a center. Brought in Jake Brendel as a center. All veterans, obviously not young players. And they like Colton McKivitz. I think he was a 5th round pick. And they spent Nick Sakiel and Spencer Burford were draft picks also. So you can say they didn't spend high enough draft capital on the line. And that's hard to argue with, but they haven't neglected it with undrafted rookie free agents or complete castaways, right? They've attempted it, but they are putting more resources elsewhere on the team. That's just what their philosophy is. And lastly, Shanahan's expectations on the year. Quote, this past year, we had a bad year. We didn't do well. We didn't make the playoffs. So we're talking about is how do we get back to playing good football? And we've known we lost a lot of good players, but what we look at here is I don't think necessarily the expectations for the season. I think about how good can we get in the draft? How many people can we add from there? He keeps going. And that's the goal for me, to try to practice and build a team where we genuinely believe every Sunday we have a chance to win. And if you can do that 1 week at a time, then you never know where it ends up. This is all logical stuff, right, guys? This isn't a year where they're coming off a Super Bowl and the team is thinking about it. And that, I mean, that was 2024, where they're coming off that Super Bowl and they're rushing to get back there, and they're going all in with certain free agent moves or whatnot, which they tried to do at the end with Gross Matos and Leonard Floyd and Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott, and the D-line just didn't work out. However much of that we want to blame Nick Sorensen or not, I'll leave you to allocate that percentage. But Shanahan's mindset is now not that they're building from square one, but the Super Bowl expectations, other people can make them. They, I'm sure, have an expectation for themselves that they think that they're still a pretty damn good football team. And I think, again, the roster weighs that out, as does, again, the sports books and their over-under of 10.5 games. There's still a lot of good football players on this team, and they're going to add to it in the draft, however much these rookies contribute, to be determined. And the idea of believing you have a chance any given Sunday, right? Niner fans spoiled, older-ish Niner fans that were there in the 80s, that have seen, multiple Super Bowls, the team of the 80s going into the 90s, winning that Super Bowl in 94, but being there on the cusp against Dallas in 92 and 93, getting there in 96 and losing to the Packers. And obviously what's happened, in 2012 and 2019 and 2023, not being able to close the deal. Niner fans are spoiled. The football fans, just like Yankee fans are in terms of baseball. There's this divine right in terms of the Niners having a spot in the NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl, which they've gotten us fans used to since 2019, right? With a couple off years in between. It's either NFC Championship game, Super Bowl appearance, or no playoffs at all. But all you can ask as a fan, forget going into week 1, week 5, week 10, going into the season, feeling like you have a shot to win your division, feeling like you have a shot to make somewhat of a run in the playoffs. And then who knows what's going to happen in terms of making a run at the NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl, right? Obviously, the Eagles are looking good. Washington was looking good, but who knows what year 2 of that looks like? The Lions are going to be a good team. The Packers and Vikings, who knows what they are if they're going to take a step back. The NFC South is bad. Someone's got to win it, but it's a bad division. And the Rams, a 10-win team, they're an team to me. And the Seahawks are going to take, I think, a step back as well, losing both of their starting receivers. So the NFC West is right there for them. And the fact that the Niners are in the mix, to me, to be one of 5 teams that have a legitimate shot of making the NFC Championship game, I'm not going to bet that they're going to go there, but a really realistic shot of winning the West. And then from there, you see how things fall. That's all you can ask for, right? And each year, there's probably only 4 or 5 teams in each conference that you feel that way about. That means there's 20 plus teams, 22 plus teams in the league that just have no shot. There's always going to be a team in each conference that maybe comes out of nowhere, right? Like Vikings had a really good season, and then Sam Darnold, remembered he was Sam Darnold last week of the regular season in the playoffs. There's always that out of nowhere, in Washington too. There's always that out of nowhere team or two. But generally speaking, you can go into the season having a good feel of who the heavy hitters are. Kyle's last quote, talking about bringing in new folks onto the team, quote, "We have guys who know how to work the right way, and football means everything to them. But half of our team hasn't seen that. So I think it's important that we still go out and prove that to each other every single day, starting in phase 1 with OTAs." And that's where we are rolling on into next week. OTAs, the draft, and then more off-season, rookie mini camps happening after the draft. And then obviously a little bit of a break as you go from May into July or June into July with that 30 plus days off before training camp starts. But this isn't a team anymore full of veterans that have been here since. There's only been a couple players that are actually literally a couple players that have been here since 2019, the first Super Bowl. And it might just be Bosa and Warner. I'd have to check on that, but that might be it. And there's obviously still a good number of players from the 2023 Super Bowl, but that run of, 2 championship games before that against the Rams, against the Eagles, and losing. A lot of those players are gone. The Hufanga, Ward, Dre Greenlaw, Aaron Banks, Deebo Samuel obviously gone too. So the newer players, and especially the younger players, there's a 49er way of doing things. There are of either being a professional, either being a 49er, or either being a football player that's looking to grow individually as part of a unit and as part of a team, and what's expected of a team that has had so much success the past 6 seasons. And like Kyle said, it's going to start day 1, phase 1, to get all these new folks on board. And then as the rookie class comes in, they'll be indoctrinated and learn about that starting with their rookie mini camps as well. So that's going to conclude the podcast for today. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. We will have another podcast before the draft. I mentioned either on Sunday or Monday. I may or may not give a mock draft, but I do have a lot of thoughts about positions, about what it looks like if they go a certain position in round 1 versus round 2, round 3. Positions I believe the Niners will address, positions I believe the Niners should not address, and maybe how many picks to a certain position the Niners need to devote. So that is upcoming Sunday or Monday. Again, thank you. Apologize for that, brief layoff, but now that there is a little bit more news to collate, and we're a week away from the draft, there's going to be a lot more stuff to talk about and a lot more things happening. And hopefully at some point soon, Brock will get signed. But between now and when we speak again, enjoy the NBA play-in tournament, playoff games starting, the second round starting in a couple, or I guess technically the first round. The non-playoff, the play-in round is starting in a few days as well. So we're going to see what happens with the NBA. But it's really NFL all the time in terms of at least us being fans of it. And 7 more days until the draft, and we'll see what the Niners are going to do. We're going to break it down a couple days before that. Until we speak again, stay happy, healthy, and safe. We will talk soon. Take care.